Hey, everybody, and welcome to the first edition of the Bama Blitz. Luke Robinson and Caleb Brooks here with you. This is something new we're trying. The Auburn Blitz has been quite the hit for the Auburn side, and they do that every day from noon to 1, every weekday, I should say. And so they were gracious enough to give us 30 minutes on Tuesday. Isn't that about how it works in Alex City, Caleb?
I guess so.
But so we're here just to talk about all things Bama and talk about anything you'd like to talk about. So if you have anything, any questions you'd like to ask us, certainly we would love to hear from you out there, just as they do on the Auburn Blitz. Same type of format where you can catch us on Facebook Live. That's the only outlet we're on at this moment. That may change eventually. We're going to see how it goes. This is going to be kind of a lead-in to Sports Blitz Live. But in between this and Sports Blitz Live, I'll be cutting the Inside the AHSA piece. So it's going to make for some pretty busy Tuesdays, as I've already cut a Talking Tuscaloosa podcast today with Jimmy Stein. So it's been a long day already and coupled in with the regular work day. But, man, it couldn't be a better time to be an Alabama fan. Caleb, were you at the game Saturday?
No, I didn't go Saturday. I went to the A&M game, decided, I sat through that game and sweated
Hot.
And everything. And I just said, I'm not going back to watch us play Louisiana. But you can't complain about how we played.
I hate to say this. You're part of the problem.
Yeah. No, but one thing you got to look at with that, I know a lot of our players were complaining about our students not showing up, but it's also hard to get people to go and pay for parking, to pay for a ticket and all that, to go watch us, win the way that we won on Saturday. And people knew that's how we were going to win going into the game as well. But, overall, you got to be pleased with where we're at as a team right now. There's really not a weakness that you can point at, really, besides the kicking game.
Well, and the kicking game is the perpetual weakness, and I'm more of a let's do some good management style and do sandwich with a good, bad, good. So we'll talk about kicking in a minute. But I think and attendance. But first and foremost, I think when you're talking Alabama right now, everything starts and ends with Tua Tagovailoa. I know that we talked about this on Talking Tuscaloosa just a minute ago, a podcast I do with Jimmy Stein, and he said this. I agree with him. I feel like it's quite hyperbolic. A lot of people may feel like it's early. I think he's the best quarterback I've ever seen at Alabama. And, again, he hadn't played. You can say, well, he hadn't played anybody this year. That is true. But he has decimated those he has played. He did play somebody last year in the half of a national championship game. And everybody loved to point to the fact, well, Georgia didn't prepare for him. That's true. He didn't prepare for Georgia either. It wasn't like he was taking first-team reps. And to come in ice cold as a true freshman and do what he did is nothing short of remarkable. And then to continue that on into the next season. And Caleb, the thing that makes him such a leader to me is that here he is, a true freshman all the way from Hawaii in a totally different culture. I mean, you can't get much more polar opposite than Alabama and Hawaii.
I agree.
He comes here. He is lauded with praise initially, but he is behind a guy who was entrenched as a starter in Jalen Hurts and who had done nothing to really lose that position. But as time wore on and as practice wore on, it was obvious Tua was the better quarterback. I got to see a practice before the Sugar Bowl last year. It was plain as day that Tua was the better passer. But at the same time, when Jalen was doing what he was doing, it's hard to supplant him. Well, Tua sat back and handled that all with grace. And now that he's become the man, he has handled that with grace. I don't know if you saw his press conference today, or not his press conference. It might as well have been his press conference. He talked about how all he did was heap praise upon Jalen Hurts. And one thing Jimmy and I discussed was that even made me like Tua even more. And I still like Jalen. They're just both great people. We're blessed to have them both at the program right now.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Jalen could have easily left. I think that the writing was on the wall after the way that he played towards the end of last year and the way that, from what I was hearing in reports and stuff, the way Tua was really coming along. And from what I've heard, Tua really kind of started coming along after he played that full half against Tennessee last year.
Right.
Had the bye week and started really making a push, LSU, Mississippi State. And that's kind of where you saw Jalen start to drop off a little bit. Tua was able to step in the national championship game, win it for us. And the way that both of them have been able to handle this whole thing, Jalen had the one little hiccup, I guess, at media days back in August. But in his defense, he'd sat there and listened all offseason to a bunch of grown men tell him what he should do, what he shouldn't do, how he should do it. And I'm sure that he was just sick of it. So he let his frustrations out. The team forgave him. Saban forgave him. And now Alabama's stuck with a really good problem with basically 2 starting quarterbacks.
And you see what the alternative would be over at Clemson, where Murphy's Law just came in and was in full effect with Trevor Lawrence getting hurt. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback. I thought Trevor Lawrence was the best high school prospect I had seen, in just watching various film. I'm no Tom Luganbill, but I've seen a lot of these guys just following recruiting so much. He was a fabulous high school quarterback, so I knew he'd be good. I knew he'd eventually get that starting job. But then the way Dabo handled it, and you would have thought it would be the opposite, that Saban would be, acerbic and kind of rough to handle with this, and then Jalen would leave in a huff, and that on the other side, Dabo would be so nurturing and just buddy with him. And I love Dabo Swinney, but it just didn't work. You got to play to the personality for it to work too. And I think Dabo's personality this time maybe worked against him a little bit. But regardless, Alabama doesn't have that problem right now. Let's go through a couple of the comments. First of all, do we think Tua will play a whole game this season? That comes from Will Baker. That's the $1 million question, right? I cannot see his playing a full game at least until LSU, and I'm not even sure he'll play a whole game against LSU.
Yeah, not from what I've seen from LSU so far. I mean, they got done winning 45 to, 16 the other night against Ole Miss, but to me wasn't overly impressed with that game considering the way that we looked against Ole Miss. And it's going to be a tough environment, but I just feel like with where we're at on offense right now, it's just hard to imagine anybody able to stop Alabama. I mean, they'll be able to slow them down, but it's hard to imagine anybody really able to stop Alabama enough to keep it a game.
No, I agree with that. And again, it sounds – the way we're talking right now sounds like the way Alabama fans always talk. I get that, that we talk like that even in 2004 or in 98 or some of the down years. I get it. But watching this team on offense, at least right now, is a beautiful thing to watch, especially from Alabama fans' perspective. When we've never seen this type of consistent performance. We haven't scored fewer than 45 points this season. We could have scored as many as 60 points per game if we wanted to.
Yeah.
There was no need to. I mean, you talk about calling the dogs off. The dogs were called off usually at halftime. Against Arkansas, I've already made the prediction. I think it's going to be 62-3. I see no reason Alabama won't score all they want to. Arkansas is abysmal on both sides of the ball. I feel like now the special teams outside of the field goal kicking is pretty awesome. I mean, Jalen Waddle's a great return man. We've already had a kickoff return for a touchdown and a punt return for a touchdown. We've already blocked a punt this year. The coverage has been good. We haven't surrendered a punt return or a kick return. The only thing we cannot do is kick the ball, either via punt or via field goal. We're the only team I can think of in history that has had the same kicker hit both sides of the goalpost in back-to-back kicks. How do you do it? I almost want to give him the job for that and say, if you just keep doing this, at least we're entertained.
I saw Travis Reier. There was a video of one of the NFL kickers, and he's kicking from the side.
I saw that.
Kicking the post, and he said, well, Bama kickers do this in the game.
That is true. That is very true. Will Baker says, do you think we lose our toughness with more of a passing offense? Not really. And for all the passing offense that we are, it is pretty clear to me Saban is still a run-first guy. I mean, and we're trying to run the ball. Our offensive line just isn't they aren't great road graders right now.
Yeah.
And frankly, I'm fine with that because I don't want a road grading offensive line trying to protect Tua. My whole deal right now is put him in bubble wrap, do what you got to do. At the same time, going back to Will Baker's other question, see, I'm greedy. I want to see Tua for at least 2.5 quarters. I did the math. If Alabama goes to the national championship game through the playoffs and the SEC championship game from here, the rest of the season, and then on to next year, at most we have Tua for 25 more games because he's leaving after his junior year. He's projected as the first pick in the draft. I don't know if people keep up with mock drafts like I do, but I look at him all the time, and he is projected as either the number 1 or number 2 pick in the draft 2 years from now. So if we only have him for 25 more games, and you have to assume that at most he's going to average 3/4 of those games, meaning playing 3/4 of each game. So then you only have him for what, 16, 17 more games of game time. I want to see him all I can.
Exactly.
I'm pro keeping him in there even a little longer, even if it means there's a slighter uptick in the percentage of chance he could get hurt.
Well, I mean, you're risking that anytime you walk out
there.
We saw it against Louisville.
On the way over here, I slammed my foot into the car door. That is not a joke. I get hurt getting into my car. You can get hurt doing anything.
Exactly.
So I don't like the argument of take him out because he's going to get hurt. Yes, I understand Murphy's Law, the Clemson thing, whatever. But, you play to play. And Tua wants to play. Tua can obliterate every offensive record quarterback-wise if we want him to, and I kind of want him to.
I do too. I mean, I want to see it, and I think a lot of fans want to see it. I see it all the time with people on Twitter talking about, we only got 5 more days till we watch Tua. We only got 3. I mean, that's what people want to see. They want to see Tua. It's something we haven't seen before at the quarterback position.
That is perfect because, see, as great as this run has been, and it has been historical, we've never seen anything like it, unless you were well aware of Alabama in the 70s, you hadn't seen anything close to this, or Oklahoma, I guess, in the 50s.
Yeah.
You hadn't seen anything like this. And frankly, I think this is better than those teams because of scholarship restrictions and parity and all these other things now,
social
and more
media.
games. So, I mean, all the egos you have to keep in check.
Yeah.
But Tua makes Alabama must-see TV. And before, Alabama wasn't necessarily must-see, unless you wanted to watch the Nature Channel and wanted to watch a tiger eat a 3-legged gazelle. Now it's like you get to see a tiger with a raccoon on its back with a machine gun, get the gazelle and then eat it, and it's a lot cooler and fun because you don't see it much more often.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. You
don't see that at all in nature, do you? Raccoons with machine guns and riding lions back. Okay.
But I was telling Andy on the Sports Blitz when I filled in for you one night, it's exciting right now as an Alabama fan, and people say, well, you've been winning, blah, blah, blah. But we haven't seen this before. I mean, this is just next level stuff. When you watch Alabama's offense, and, it has kind of translated over to where we're not stopping people as much on defense because we're out on the field a little bit longer. I think it was going into the A&M game through the first 3 games. Tua had 20 drives for 14 touchdowns, and only 1 was above 3 minutes.
That's right. Well, look, I wrote these. I mean, this is me doing some quick math on the way over here. And just to echo the point that we could obliterate we would be destroying Alabama record books right now if we wanted to, okay? And then also to cool the flames of, oh, my God, the defense is on fire. No, the defense is okay. So in Alabama, in the first quarters of the first 5 games, Alabama scored 103 points. Second quarter, 94 points. Then they start pulling the reins back. Alabama scored 57 and 17 points only in the fourth quarter because we're essentially kneeling the ball every time. On the other side of the ball on defense, Alabama's given up 14 points on defense so far. The one of them was just sort of a busted coverage against Ole Miss first play of the game.
Yeah.
And then they have also given up 6 points in the second quarter, meaning so the first team defense has essentially given up 20 points in 5 games in the first half so far this year, period. Now, then in the third quarter, they've given up 17, and in the fourth quarter, they have given up 28 points. So the fourth quarter, when you've got as much of a mass substitution situation as you have in Nick Saban is never an empty the bench guy, but, because his starters play a little longer, he's got an NFL mentality like that, then I think what it tells me is we're just not in trouble defensively. It's fine. Yes, Louisiana rushed for 200 yards. They got them all late. I left midway through the third, and they didn't have anywhere close to that. I'm part of the problem too, leaving so early. But, and speaking of attendance, the one thing that I will talk about there, I don't mind the general fan not going to games sometimes if they want to. My only gripe is give your ticket away, or if you can't sell it. But if you're a student, I think you got to go. And because the student section was so barren, and I understand it was 11, I understand they get their party on. I was at Alabama for 4 years. I know how it goes. But so if that's going to be the way it is, then here's my solution to that. You say go back to you have your student ACT card, which I assume everybody still does at Alabama. That's what you have, your little student ID card. And the first, how many are in the student section? 25,000, 20,000?
I'd say, yeah, around 25,000.
The first 20 get in. First 20,000 get in. Now, no more tickets. No, right now they do it based on, you get 3 tickets and you get 4 tickets and the seniors get privilege or whatever. First 25,000 get in. That will assure me that the students will be there and that they'll be rabid, because they'll be the ones that want to get there and they'll camp out and they'll do their thing and do that for every game. The first 25,000 get in, and that's no more block seating. I was a frat guy. I still don't want block seating if you're not going to show.
Yeah, and I mean, that is a huge problem, is the block seating, and then you have people not showing up, and we saw that on Saturday. I mean, that was a prime example of it, and that was why the student section looked the way it did, where you have other people that would want to come to the game that aren't able to, or would want to sit right there and aren't able to because of block seating. So I'm also one that's for getting rid of block seating. I don't really think that it has a purpose for the students, besides the frats getting to sit where they want to sit and all that stuff. But because to me, I've always said this growing up, my favorite fans are the ones that sit to the left of the band. Yeah. Those are the ones that stay. And those are the ones that are out there making noise and actually engaged in the game. So those are my favorite, the ones that aren't in the frats and the sorority. So I'm for getting rid of it as a whole. Again,
and I say this as a frat guy, that we were sort of, and maybe they're not this way now, but we were sort of too cool for school when we were there. It's just, everybody was whatever and, and like and all those things. And we just sort of, we just went to the game. Yeah. It was a social event. I want the nuts there.
Exactly.
I want the guys that are committed. That's what the fans should be. Now, I'm older now. I don't have to get that way. I do get that way, but I'm saying I don't have to. Toolman Kirk says, why is Saban not able to get this fixed with the standard we have at all other positions, meaning the kicking game? Well, first of all, I would make the argument that he has done about as well as you can in some regard. Cade Foster was very highly regarded kicker. For whatever reason, he comes to Tuscaloosa and develops a club foot. I don't know what to say about it. J.K. Scott, though, was the best punter in Alabama history. I don't think that's even – nobody can even put up a second. I mean, Chris Moore, maybe. So J.K. Scott was a home run. Since then, Bulovas was pretty highly regarded. He had Eddie Pinheiro committed. He ended up going to Florida. Now he's in the pros. I mean, he's still in the
Oakland Raiders.
He is with the Oakland Raiders. Okay.
Griffith was a highly touted guy coming out as well. Adam Griffith was.
Oh, definitely was. The main miss, and this goes just Alabama fans just put their head in their hand, is Daniel Carlson.
Yeah.
If Alabama gets him, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind Alabama's got at least one more national championship. I would have to put 2013 up there as, we would have won that game. Because, number one, we wouldn't have gone for it late and we would have kicked the field goal.
Cade Foster missed 3 field goals.
He missed 3 field goals that day. Yeah, but he just give me one of them.
Yeah. This is just one of the field goals. That game's a lot different. So that was a big key, and a lot of people forget about that. Is he did miss 3, and then a lot of people forget we made one, had a false start.
That's right.
A ghost false start where they still hadn't seen where the guy moved.
That's right.
Then the ball went in. The next one goes wide left. So
it was that was it. That game was pretty haunting. And it definitely would have been a three-peat, and then it would have been a way to end the BCS and ring in the next year. And again, if we have a kicker like that, I just think things are different all the way around. I definitely don't think we lose against a team like Ole Miss any time. It just changes your whole dynamic. But as it is, thank the good Lord, we have a guy like Tua who is so precise and who is taking care of the ball so incredibly well. And again, he's not, his passer rating is unbelievable. It's off the charts. And he is only 8 for 8, though. That's my concern. I'm picking nits here. I just want to see more.
Yeah.
I would prefer 12 of 15 for 250 and 2 touchdowns rather than 8 of 8 for 128 and 2 touchdowns. I understand. On the surface, the 8 for 8 seems better, but I just want and I think that's what he wants.
Yeah, without a doubt, you work as hard as he did all off season. You want to play in games, but I was listening on another radio show the other day, and they brought up a good point. It's not really all Saban's fault either. We blocked a kick, had a short field, then we had the punt return, and all of a sudden we're up 28-0 without really having to do much on
that. That is true. There's very little you can do about that. And also on the touchdown, I think it was scored by Josh Jacobs, the 1 yard or two, it got down to the 1.
Yeah.
And I mean, they tried to run him in, and I know this is me trying to pad an individual stats but I want the kid to win that. I mean, an Alabama quarterback's never won the Heisman.
And you want to see it.
I want to see it. And I also want to see it's the coolest story. A kid from Hawaii coming to Alabama, having, going up against the incumbent who was it's just an unbelievable story. You can't script it.
No, you can't. And I was saying something else today. I don't know if you know this, but Alabama has the top 2 passer rating quarterbacks in the SEC.
It's
Tua
ridiculous.
and Jalen. Jalen is number 2. I think Tua is at maybe 226 passer rating, and Jalen's at 197. So it's incredible.
And it is wild because I do think this has made Jalen a better quarterback.
I do too. I think that if you watch the games and you can't tell that Jalen Hurts has become a better quarterback, then you're not watching the games.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's obvious. It's obvious in the way the ball comes out of his hand. It's obvious in the way that he's making decisions now. The throw that he had, I think it was against Texas A&M, where he rolled to the right and made the throw to Jalen Waddle towards sideline. He's not making that throw last year. He's running the ball or he's throwing it out of bounds.
I totally agree. The pass to Henry Ruggs this year, I think he checks that down otherwise. I mean, and he got nailed as he was throwing it.
Yeah.
He just got absolutely smacked. And, I think so in the end, I think this is going to be good for all parties. And I guess the burning question I would have, I mean, I'm dreaming here. I know this is not going to happen, but my best case scenario would be Jalen comes back. I see there's zero chance, but just hear me out. What if Jalen Hurts is just the kind of guy that's like, I like winning. I like it here. If something happens to it, I'm the guy. Meanwhile, I'm going to get my reps. I'm not going to have quite as much. I'm going to have a lot of tread left on the tires, like Damian Harris said. And I get to stay and probably win another championship. I mean, you got Ruggs and Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle and Jerry Jeudy and all the tight ends and a lot of the offensive line and a lot of good running backs coming back. I mean, there's no reason to think Alabama won't be squarely in the mix again next year. So maybe. I mean, I'm probably thinking way out of bounds here.
I wouldn't say 0% chance because I've actually said the same thing. I said the same thing on Lake Martin Sports Roundup last night, Coach Hines. If Jalen Hurts, to me, there's 2 things he should do. Number 1, if you want to play quarterback, stay at Alabama, get your 10 to 15 snaps a game as the backup because that's all scouts are going to be looking at anyway.
That's right.
It's 10 to 15 snaps a game. You get them. You're playing with some of the best guys around you that you're going to find in all of the country. So I don't think it'd be a bad option. Number 2, ask an NFL scout, where do I have the best chance of getting drafted at? Because I don't think it's quarterback. I don't think a lot of people think that it's quarterback. Maybe it's H-back, maybe it's wide out, maybe it's slot. I mean, whatever it is, ask where the best chance you have of getting drafted at, move there, stay at Alabama, and play that position.
And so you bring up a good point because I think the initial inclination for most people would be he's such a good runner. But he's a good running quarterback. I don't necessarily think he's a good running back. So I do think, though, you sort of do a Trey Burton type thing and you go to H-back. Trey Burton's in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
Again, and I don't know, but I don't know how good Jalen's hands are outside of the fact I saw that one highlight where he caught a high pass in warm-ups. So I don't know if that'll work. I don't know if that's even a possibility. But right now, I'm just so giddy the way things are going. I'm thinking outside the box, and I want more and more and more. But having said that, okay, so would you say, again, this is the Bama Blitz. I feel like I know what you're going to say, but you think Tua's the leading Heisman vote getter, and do you feel like he should win it?
Right now, yes. I don't see another quarterback. I know Kyler Murray's putting up decent numbers. I know that Dwayne Haskins is putting up decent numbers. I know Will Greer's putting up decent numbers, really good numbers, actually, in his case. But when you look at what Tua's done, the effect he's had on the offense, and the fact that first game of the year he's taken out after the first quarter, besides coming back in and throwing that touchdown pass to Jeudy at the end. Second game of the year he played a quarter. Ole Miss he played a quarter. A&M he didn't play past the 9-minute mark of the third quarter. And then this past week he didn't finish the first quarter. And then he's still putting up the numbers he is, 75% completion percentage. He's still got almost 1,200 yards passing. I mean, it's just hard. And no interceptions so far in the year. And that's all we heard all offseason was, you might get Tua, but you're going to have to take your lumps with him. He's going to throw interceptions. Yep. He's going to try to force it. I hadn't seen it yet. I mean, there's maybe one pass, and I think it was in the Ole Miss game. He threw one kind of in between Devontae Smith and Jerry Jeudy. It was in no man's land.
It was Arkansas State. Yeah. It hit the kid in the hands, and he dropped it.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe the next play even he threw a touchdown.
Yeah, that's what it was. So, I mean, besides that, he's almost been flawless for the most part.
And again, it's it's funny because I feel like, again, we're talking the way people imagine Alabama fans talk all the time. I try to be more of a realist. But Nick Saban has blown reality out of the water for us. Now, it's going to be a horrible come down when he leaves. I admit that. As it is, I'm going to ride this wave just as long as I can. One thing we're going to do here on the Bama Blitz, we probably won't do so much of it today, but we will try to talk about basketball. So hopefully, if you have any questions, we'll try and get guests on here. We may bump this thing up to an hour. We're just going to see how it goes. We're just
big commitment this past weekend in basketball as well. For
big commitment. And the Shackelford kid out of California, that gives us 3 top 100 kids for this class.
With Trendon Watford kind of.
He's out there. And I feel good about Trendon Watford to Alabama. I do. I know he's got certainly some family ties with Mike Miller. I think somehow, some way there's a connection there at Memphis.
Yeah, he's taking an official visit there this week.
Yeah, he's going there. He's going to Alabama. He's going to a couple other places. But in the end, I feel good about it, just like I felt good about Kyra Lewis. And Lewis has certainly been good in practice so far, is my understanding, or been good with playing with the teammates, et cetera. But one thing that we're going to have to learn with him, and you talked about Tua maybe taking your lumps, Lewis will have been a high school senior this year, and he's going to probably be our main point guy.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have some turnovers, and we've got a tough schedule again. The thing about basketball is it's fine to have a tough schedule. Just as long as you can circumvent to a 500 record, there's a good chance in the conference. There's a good chance you're going to get in the tournament. And I feel like we're going to be about to be a tournament mainstay. And if you can get somebody like Watford to come in, and assuming Lewis stays for another year, which I think he will, all of a sudden you've got the makings of a squad.
Yeah, and you look at Alabama basketball, really only lost 2 guys last year, Shannon Hale being one of them, who I'm not really that upset about losing.
No, I think that was a good thing.
Yeah, I do too. I think that he caused some issues on the team from what I could see. I think he had a lot of selfishness in him. And then you lose Sexton, who – I mean, people can say whatever they want. Losing Colin Sexton's going to be a big deal. A lot of people tried to say that he held the team back. I disagree. When you look at Alabama, wouldn't have gotten where they got without him last year.
Yep.
I mean, the guy played 3-on-5 basketball, put up 40 points, and almost came back and led them to a win over a team that at the time was a top 25 team in the country. So, they're going to be missing him. But Kiera Lewis coming in at a really, really good time, especially with the news of Jared Butler with his heart condition, having to leave.
Who strangely is medically cleared at Baylor. Now, I'll tell you, with Baylor getting that other letter from the NCAA here, I guess yesterday, I'm not so sure I would take Baylor's word for a lot of things, but I guess if our doctors they just would not clear it. They just believe there's some kind of issue here. And it's unfortunate because that kid's good.
And you see Shaquille O'Neal's son's going through the same thing he's having to go through right now. He's going to miss this year with a heart condition.
But we played Baylor this year too in Baylor in January.
And that's going to be a really, really interesting matchup. And I like seeing those matchups. I'm glad that Alabama is now involved with playing in that Big 12 SEC Challenge, because that means that you're doing good.
Right.
Because if you're not playing in those games, the SEC is the one that's deciding who's playing in those games.
Well, I think that there is a formula about if you finish in the bottom, I think the top 10 teams from 2 years ago it's a weird way to do it. But that's my understanding. Two-Man Kirk says a Bama Blitz sign in the background would also be nice. We agree. We talked about it just a minute ago. We have one over there, but it was sort of the prototype, a little bit too shiny. And so we're going to try and get a Bama Blitz sign here before too long. So we'll be sure and throw it up here. But yeah, Two-Man Kirk, thank you for Robin Brooks says, great job, Caleb. I'm sitting here too, Robin. I'm just sitting right here. But recruiting-wise, as far as football goes, not a ton to talk about. It was a very lax weekend this past weekend, thankfully, with only about 75,000 people there. But a lot of big fish still out there with Clay Webb and Trey Sanders, running back out of IMG Academy, and Evan Neal, the lineman out of the same place, the big offensive lineman out of West Virginia, who a lot of people, Darnell Wright, Alabama's still working to flip George Pickens if they can do it. There's Wan'Dale Robinson, the kid out of Kentucky, that's sort of Jalen Waddle-esque. But we'll get into recruiting more later. It's not going to really be a thing because Alabama's waiting on so many big names. Jalen Waddle, though, he had to impress you.
Oh, I'm telling you, I watched his highlights before he got to Alabama, and I knew. I told my brothers, I told my family, I told my friends. I said, Alabama's got a punt return.
Yeah.
And they got one for a while now. And that was before the season ever started. I remember seeing the depth chart come out, and Trayvon Diggs was listed number 1 at punt return, and I was really disappointed when I saw that. But then Waddle runs out there for the first punt return, and from that point on, I mean, he's just been electric. And when anytime he touches the ball, he has a chance to score. Did you go to the Texas A&M game?
I didn't. I
was at it, and when they kicked the first punt to him, I didn't expect them to actually kick it to him.
Yeah.
But they actually kick it to him, and you could just feel the whole crowd just start anticipating. They knew something special could happen. And, as long as we don't block people in the back, which we seem to have a big problem of doing, as long as we don't do that, he's got a chance to take it to the house every single time.
Well, and there was an incredible block by Jalen Moody.
Yeah, great block by him. And he's a guy that in the future is going to be really, really, really good.
He is. I'll tell you who he reminds me of is Deshaun Davis, a little maybe unheralded recruit that is going to be that guy that works his way. He'll be a good senior, a good senior linebacker for us. He will stay, I think, his whole time, and he's going to be a good player. Robin Brooks said you're doing a good job too. Thank you, Robin. Waddle is a guy my buddy Jimmy Stein has just been singing his praises for the longest time. And Caleb, I'm not it's hard to imagine this, but David Palmer predates you.
Yeah.
I mean, you were not around for the Palmer era.
I've seen highlights.
My advice is to try and find the highlights from Jackson Olin. Those are even more incredible. But his game against Colorado is the thing of legend. I mean, it was just people shouldn't be able to get out of spots like that. And for him, it's one thing for a guy to do that once. I mean, Prothero was a a good returner. And every now and again, he could get out of a tight spot, and he was great. People love Javier Arenas. I think Javi was great.
Mays was great.
Mays was great. Palmer was a different level, and Waddle has got some Palmer in him, but he's definitely faster. Palmer wasn't a speed burner. Nobody ever caught him, but it just didn't look like he was. Waddle looks fast.
No, yeah, you can tell when he's running by people.
You
really see how fast he is. I mean, he just flies. He glides past people. It's amazing watching him run.
Well, and the other thing is when the other players for Alabama that a lot of them are going to be drafted and a lot of them are drafted, and they all have been raving about this kid since he got there, just the same way they raved about Tua. A lot of these same kids were going, "Oh my God, this guy spins the ball. You wouldn't believe it." So Nancy Sprague says, "Yay, Luke, for Bama Blitz." So thank you, Nancy. So we will definitely put this on the Lake Martin Bama Club Facebook site as often as possible. Look, we are in no particular time frame right this minute. We're going to probably start this thing roughly 5:30 for the time being every Tuesday, roughly ended around 6 o'clock. If something changes with that and we want to go strictly from 5 to 6, we will let everybody know. We obviously would, if anybody would love to be a sponsor, hey man, we're all ears. So we appreciate anybody listening in. Mark Knight says, will there ever be enough national tiredness over Alabama's constant playoff presence to force another SEC game or playing better regular season opponents? First of all, the thing I'd say about that is Alabama's done a pretty doggone good job of scheduling. The Louisville game, I mean, it's kind of not Alabama's fault.
But when they scheduled it, Louisville was number 4 in the country.
Yeah, Louisville was pretty strong.
Literally, when they announced that game, Louisville was the number 4 team in the country.
Now, I get the argument about Duke next year, but Alabama was supposed to play – it was supposed to be somebody else, and then it was going to be Arizona because at the time, Greg Byrne was at Arizona, and I think they had worked it out. And Rich Rod was there, and it seemed like, okay, this could be a kind of Rich Rod versus Saban, a lot of drama. Well, it didn't work out for whatever reason, and then Duke had some kind of in with somebody with the game, and that worked out. I'm with you. I don't like the Duke game. I mean, I know Duke was ranked last year. Frankly, Duke's a better matchup than Louisville was.
Yeah.
It really. But I don't like it. I wish it were another team. But Alabama's got USC in Dallas in 20. at Miami and Atlanta in 2021. And then they start a home and home with Texas 22-23.
You know they're going to schedule something probably in between Texas and the Notre Dame game.
And Greg Burns already said that'll probably be some more neutral site stuff. So he's going to work in some home and homes with some big name teams. And, Alabama's schedules, Alabama hasn't ducked anybody. No. Now that you want to say they should play more home and homes, Alabama can't pass up the payday. Now, Tuscaloosa doesn't benefit quite as much, the town, but the university benefits a lot. These paydays make a lot of money for Alabama, and they don't have to go through a lot of the rigmarole you got to do at home. So I think that it's
well, here's my thing on the scheduling thing. I get sick of hearing people talk about Alabama's all they play is cupcakes. All they play. Since Nick Saban got to Alabama, there's not another school that has played more Power 5 non-conference opponents than Alabama. The next closest is LSU with 7. Alabama's played 9. I think it's 10 now with Louisville, and then LSU's with 7, and I think now 8 with Miami. That was before the year. So it ain't like Alabama's been ducking anybody. They've played Virginia Tech, Clemson, West Virginia, Michigan, USC, Wisconsin, Florida State last year, who, if Alabama doesn't hurt their quarterback, probably ends the year 9-3, 10-2.
Easily.
So I'm really sick of hearing that about Alabama.
Well, and here's the other thing. Who would they schedule that's on par with them? Why would Ohio State and Alabama agree to a home and home right now when they probably get to play each other in the playoffs? If they play each other, they offset one another.
Yes, people aren't they're not just knocking on Alabama's door saying that they want to schedule Alabama.
Exactly. I mean, again, I'm not trying to make excuses. I understand, but everybody in the SEC in particular has usually a marquee game, and then sort of a Sun Belt-ish, maybe 2 Sun Belters, and then a football championship series team, which I'm fine with. Again, I don't mind those games. They give me a chance to take my kids without worrying about paying $150 a ticket. I think everybody should have the right to do that at some point just to see the team they love. So, and then you talk about 9-game schedules.
Saban's for it.
We may have been cut off. I don't know. Did we get cut off? Is anybody still out there? No, we're still on. Okay, maybe my computer just cut off. But so Saban wants 9 games.
He's the only one that wants 9 games.
It makes sense. And for all the people that want to expand the playoffs, I'm not an expand the playoffs guy. I think 68 teams in the basketball championship is stupid and too many, but I live with it. I think 8 teams in the playoff is crazy because why should we reward Central Florida for playing nobody all year long? You want to worry about Alabama's schedule? Look what they're playing.
Exactly.
So if 8 teams benefits Alabama, we would have been in the playoff. We were in the playoff every year anyway. But when's the last time we wouldn't have been in the playoff? Maybe 2010.
Maybe.
Maybe. So, and in 2010, I would say you could make the argument they should be in it. That was probably the best team in the country. Michigan State would argue they were.
Yeah.
So Bama makes power teams on our schedule look pedestrian, Two-Man Kirk says. And I think he's right. I mean, how many of those non-conference games have been butt whoopings, which turn into somebody saying, well, they weren't any good to begin with.
The same USC team that Alabama beat 52-6 went
to the Rose Bowl. That's right. And won it. Didn't they win it?
Yeah, I think they did.
They beat Penn State, right?
Beat Penn State. So a 10-3 USC team that year, I think, or maybe an 11-2. And Alabama beat them 52-6. People want to say that
Penn State team had the eventual number 1 pick in the draft. Granted, he didn't have his feet wet then either. Alabama's didn't either.
And Alabama beat them 52-6. They didn't know who their quarterback was.
That's right.
Blake Barnett started. Jalen Hurts played, and Cooper Bateman played in that game.
That's right.
They didn't know who they wanted to go with at the time, and still was able to win 52-6.
And again, it's just it's one of those things that does bother me. They look like cupcakes when they're getting beat so badly, that's true. But
these same teams now, App State's in the Sun Belt.
Yep.
App State took Penn State to overtime. Arkansas State's in the Sun Belt and probably is better than Appalachian State in the Sun Belt.
If Arkansas State and Arkansas played today, Arkansas State's a 7-point favorite?
Yeah, they're winning. I'm telling you, I've gotten to see them going to school at Troy. I've gotten to watch them. They came to Troy when Troy got ranked a few years ago and beat them 35-3.
Well, and that's my point. What if Alabama, instead of Arkansas State, were playing Rutgers? Would we get more credit for that? Rutgers is one of the worst teams I've ever seen.
They lost to Kansas 51-14.
Got smoked?
To Kansas.
So my point is, just because they have the Power 5 behind their name, if they're the lower tier side, and my battery's in that. It looks looks like. So this is one of the other, without commercial breaks, this is one of the things we get to do. Well, look, it's probably time we call it today regardless, because I'm going to have to go cut inside the HSA. I want to thank everybody who chimed in for the program. Caleb did a great job today. Appreciate his being on here. This is going to be kind of cool. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a great time to be doing this because, again, we are living in high cotton right now. And it's never going to be like this again. No. As soon as Saban steps down, I'm done with this show.
Even if Dabo steps in, it's not going to be the way it is right now. I mean,
look, and we can talk, that's a whole nother show. But I think that Alabama's going to have some type of transition like that from one extreme to the other. Because if somebody comes in and they're remotely like Saban, people are going to expect them to be Saban. And you can't do it.
Yep.
But if you go the other end of the spectrum, people can say, well, he's doing his own thing. He's got his own personality. Let's give him a little time. If he is moderately like Saban, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. But for Caleb Brooks, I'm Luke Robinson. We say thank you so much. Roll Tide, everybody, and we'll catch you next week.